Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be updating our course info application using the concept we saw in the previous video. So we're going to extend our application to allow for an arbitrary number of courses. Since we have a lot of refactoring to do, we're going to start from scratch. In our main file, we're going to import the app component. We're also going to import React DOM. And now we're going to define our collection, which is going to be a collection of our courses. You can copy and paste the collection from the description below. So the collection is going to be an array, and each object in the array is going to represent one course. So the first course has a name, an ID, and it has a parts attribute, which is an array of objects. So inside the parts, we're going to have different objects with their own ID. And now we're going to render our component using React DOM. And in the render function, we're going to pass in our app component, and it's going to take an input, which is going to be the courses, and we're going to pass in our courses collection. Now we can save our main file and go to our app file. In here, we're going to define our app component, which takes in an input. In here, we're going to return the different courses using the map function. So in curly braces, we're going to have courses.map, and we're going to get the course parameter, and we want to return a course, which we're going to be defining in a separate component called course, which is going to take in a course input, and we're going to pass in the course we get from the map function. We also need to define a key attribute, which we're going to pass in course.id, which we have in our collection. And finally, we're going to close our component. And now we need to define this course component. So we're going to have const course, and it's going to take in a course input. And here we're going to return a div that contains two components. So we're going to have a header component, which also has a course input, and we're going to pass in the course we get. And it's also going to have a content component, which also takes the course as input. And now we need to define these components. So we're going to have header, which takes in course. And what the header is going to do is it's going to return an h1 tag that displays the name attribute of our course. Next, we're going to define the content component, which also takes the course as input. And in here, we're going to return the different parts. So we're going to have multiple parts, so we need the map function again. So in curly braces, we're going to access course.parts. So we're accessing the parts attribute, which is an array. That means we can use the map function. And for each part, we're going to return another component, which we're going to define, which is the part component. And this component is going to take an input called part, and we're going to pass in the part we get from the map function. Now, since this is a list, we also need a key attribute, and we're going to pass in part.id, which we defined in our collection. And now we can close our component, and now we're going to define the part component. So we're going to have const part. It's going to take an input called part, and in here we're going to return a p tag that displays the part's name, followed by a space and the part's exercises. So now we've defined all our components, so we can export the app component. So we're going to have export default app, and we're going to save our file, and we're going to open the terminal. We're going to navigate to our project, and we're going to cd into course info, and we're going to run npm run dev. Now if we open our browser as you can see, we get the different courses and their parts displayed on the screen. The next thing we want to do is display the total number of exercises for each course. So we're going to define a separate component called total, which is going to take an input, which is going to be the course. And we're going to return a p tag. We're also going to use the strong tag, which is going to make whatever text we put bold. And in here, we're going to have total exercises. And in curly braces, we're going to pass in course.parts, which is going to give us the array of parts. And we're going to use a new function, which is the reduce function. And in here, we're going to pass in another function called getSum, which we're going to define, and we're going to pass in 0. So the reduce method or function takes two inputs, a function and a value. And inside the function that we pass in, which in this case is the getSum function, we're going to get two parameters. The first one we're going to call total, and the second one we're going to call part. So the 0 we passed in to our reduce method is going to get assigned to the first parameter as an initial value, which in this case is the total parameter. And the next input we get is the individual elements in our array. So in our case, when we get the individual elements, we want to access their exercises attribute. So we're going to have a return statement. And here we're going to pass in total plus part.exercises. So what this does is it's going to add the different number of exercises to the total variable, and finally we would get the sum of all our exercises. Now we're going to add our total component. In the course component, we're going to add a call to the total component, and we're going to give it the course attribute. And now we can save our file and go to the browser. As you can see, the total exercises are displayed together with the different courses. Now our program is completely extendable. That means without touching anything in our app file, we can add courses with a different number of parts and our application would still work. So let's add an additional course to test this. So in our collection, we're going to add another course. We're going to give it a name. Let's call it Python. It's going to have an ID of 3. And it's going to have a parts attribute, which is going to be an array. And the first part is going to be called Flask. And it's going to have 10 exercises. And we're going to give it an ID as well. And we're going to have another part. We're going to call it Django. And it's going to have an exercise attribute of 5. And we're going to give it an ID as well. And now if we save our main file and go to the browser, the new course we just added gets displayed with no issues. Now the final thing we're going to do is move our components to a separate directory. So we're going to cut them. And in our source folder, we're going to create another folder called components. And we're going to create a new file. Since our highest level component is the course component, we're going to name the file after that component. And in here, we're going to paste all the components. And at the end, we're going to export our main component, which is the course component. And now we can save this file and go back to our main file. And we're going to import course from the current directory. We're going to go to components, then to course. And now if we save our file and go to the browser, we get the same output. So this has been an exercise on extending our course info application using collections. Thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel to show your support.